Shalom and welcome. You are listening to Temple Talk from the International Department of the Temple Institute in Jerusalem, Israel. Rabbi Richman here together with Yitzchak Reuven. Today is Rosh Chodesh, the first day, actually the 30th day of the month of Tishrei, but the first day of Rosh Chodesh, the new moon of the month of Cheshvan, Mar Cheshvan, the bitter Mr. Cheshvan, today and tomorrow. Today is October the 13th, 2015, and this week we read the second Torah portion in the book of Genesis, Parashat Noach. And in that Torah portion, we read of a world gone mad. We read, unbelievably, of a world that was just created last week in our timing in the Torah portion, and this week already we read God himself, if such a thing can be said, was so disappointed with his creation that he wanted to start all over again. The world was utterly decadent and just gone insane, and that, of course, is a feeling that we here in Israel can identify with very readily. Last week in Temple Talk, just a day after Sukkot concluded, we spoke about the murders that took place immediately prior to the broadcast, and the murders that took place during Sukkot. And since then, of course, we have been experiencing here in Israel a spate of murders.
You said, Rabbi, since then, of course, with the understanding that our listeners are well aware of this, and hopefully they are, but unless you have, you're listening to media from inside Israel,
right,
you won't be aware of it.
This is the thing, Yitzchak, what I meant.
The Western media is not
Listen to me,
relating to it.
When I said a world gone mad, when I said insane, what I was really thinking about the most was not just the wanton, horrific, barbarous murder that's taking place here on the streets of Jerusalem and all over Israel. But what I'm really thinking about when I said a world gone mad, I was thinking about what you just said exactly, that these people that are wonderful listeners, they probably don't even know what we're talking about because they are living in some kind of incredible bubble where the machinery of what's politically correct and the agenda of the powers that be, they have set what people should be aware of, know about, care about, so that if they do know anything at all, they're going to know that the Jews are making trouble because the headlines of the major news organizations in the Western world, if they say anything at all, they actually twist and invert the whole story so that you can have a situation where a headline will say something like a Palestinian boy was killed by the IDF in the aftermath of an attack in Jerusalem, right? And there's a Palestinian body count that's going on in the world press that's turning the whole thing on its head, and that is much substantiated by Palestinian claims that they're being chased out by settlers and that they are being victimized. And Abu Mazen, the head of the Palestinian Authority, gets up and just today, here, look, I got it right here. He is asking for the world to help. They are asking for the Arab League chief here, is calling on the world to protect the Palestinians. So the genie is out of the bottle.
These Palestinians walking in the streets of Jerusalem or Ra'anana, which is a coastal city, or Tel Aviv, walking around with knives and chasing after and stabbing and cutting down Jews, are being endangered by the Jewish reaction, which is to stop them.
Again, I just hope that the people that are listening have any idea of what's going on, okay? As of today in Jerusalem, it's the real time as we record this program today on Tuesday, October 13th, is 5 minutes to 3 in the afternoon. There were 3 lethal terrorist attacks today, 2 of them in Jerusalem. 2 terrorists opened fire on a bus in a suburb of Jerusalem, and 2 people so far have died as a result of that. And then there was an incident here in the heart of Jerusalem wherein a terrorist rammed into a bus stop. killed one man, a rabbi that was waiting for the bus, and then got out of the car and began stabbing people. There was also knifings in other cities in Israel today and yesterday. I'm getting to that point now. I'm ashamed where I'm starting to blur and forget about it because it's hard to keep track of. But today alone, there are 3 murders and many wounded, at least 17. Many grievous wounds. There is still a 16-year-old boy fighting for his life that was wounded yesterday from a knife attack here in Jerusalem. When was it, Yitzchak, the attack by a Gan Shmuel, when a resident of Al-Faham rammed his car into a group of people and stabbed several of them as well, and he, Allah Zwid, he comes to court and he smiles and he says that it was a traffic accident, and he says that he didn't do anything wrong whatsoever. And the list goes on and on and on. Today we find out that the attacker in Jerusalem was actually a first cousin of the terrorists, one of the terrorists in Har Nof, who murdered all of those people in the synagogue a few months back. And we find out that the terrorist who rammed into the bus stop in the heart of Jerusalem and killed a man and got out and started stabbing was actually a resident of East Jerusalem and an employee of the Bezik telephone company. And it goes on and on and on, and the ultimate irony of all, first of all, aside from what we mentioned, that do people even know what we're talking about? Why is this all going on? Does anybody hear about it? Does anybody care? It's all empowered by a morally bankrupt world. But you know that the Secretary of State of the United States of America told the Prime Minister of Israel that the status quo at the Temple Mount must be upheld.
In spirit, in letter, and spirit, in word and deed.
Now understand the background here. The background here is that the Palestinian, so-called Palestinian death machines operation is cynically manipulating world opinion to believe that Israel has intentions, has designs on changing what's called the status quo at the Temple Mount. Now listen very, very carefully. So in other words, the Temple Mount and the concept of Jewish prayer at the Temple Mount is being used as an excuse for everything that's happening here, for all of these murders. And of course, bear in mind that the PLO, which became the Palestinian Authority, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, was founded in Jordan in 1964, when Israel was not sovereign on the Temple Mount. And of course, Israel is not really sovereign on the Temple Mount either, even now. But I mean, we've always tried to remind everybody that the Palestinian death machine has nothing to do with Israeli occupation. It has everything to do with the fact that Jews exist, because there is no connection whatsoever. But the point is, Netanyahu comes along, and he says, this is a dirty lie. He says, this is a dirty lie. We have no intention whatsoever of changing the status quo on the Temple Mount. We never would do that. So I don't know where to start here with the absurdity of all of this, because when the expression status quo is used regarding the Temple Mount, it denotes an illegal situation, admittedly illegal situation, against the laws of the State of Israel, in which non-Muslims are not allowed to pray or express any religious sentiment on the Temple Mount. It is illegal that it is that way. Netanyahu empowers the Waqf, which is the employee of Jordan, to keep that in place. And so Jews have been trying to pray on the Temple Mount for decades, many decades. And now when they come along and they say this is the reason that we're randomly murdering babies and women and everyone that we can get our hands on throughout the streets of Israel because Jews are praying on the Temple Mount, Netanyahu comes along and says, that's not true. I'm not planning on doing that whatsoever. So where do I even start talking about how ridiculous this whole situation is? Where, first of all, we should be praying on the Temple Mount. We have every right in the world to pray on the Temple Mount. And if we were praying on the Temple Mount, it doesn't endanger anyone, and it doesn't endanger Jordanian interests or Palestinian interests or anything, the fact that the Jewish people are allowed to pray on the Temple Mount. But that's not what it's all about at all. The reason that they're killing us, the reason that they hand out candy when they butcher us, The reason that they gloat today on the radio, Hamas radio, and says that they've managed to bring Israel to a standstill and infiltrate the deepest places like Ra'anana and these coastal cities and everything. The reason why Abu Mazen, right, Abbas, who is the head of the Palestinian Authority, the reason why he portrays the Hamas terrorists who he pays a monthly salary to, the reason why he portrays them as heroes and why he calls for the shedding of Jewish blood, and then out of the other side of his mouth, the Holocaust denier, that's his PhD, out of the other side of his mouth, he goes and he says that he's working so hard to bring about peace and calm. The reason that they do all of these things, the reason that we spoke to you last week about the woman whose husband was murdered before her eyes and who was running through the streets of Jerusalem with a knife in her neck, being pushed and spat at and laughed at by the Arabs, the reason that this is so is because they want us to die. It's got nothing to do with the Temple Mount, unless it has everything to do with the Temple Mount, and the Temple Mount has everything to do with everything. The fact is, it's just that they want us to die altogether.
And the enlightened, smug, slick, sophisticated West is just basking in the slaughter and basking in the lies and basking in the hypocrisy and the cynicism and doing nothing about it except to say to Israel, you need to tone down your reaction.
Both sides. And this is the most unbelievable thing that I keep on reading in CNN and all these vacuous, ridiculous, things, right? The spiral of violence in the Middle East, right? Both sides have to do something. What exactly should we do? Not leave the house? Because our very existence is incitement to being killed.
The Arabs that are murdering Jews here in the streets of Jerusalem today are the same Arabs that are murdering hundreds of thousands of their own brethren in Syria, in Iraq, in
and the same morally bankrupt world that blames Israel for the Jews dying, and that blames Israel's existence for the fact that we are intransigently in the way of a Palestinian state, and all of these things. That same morally bankrupt world, which is so reminiscent of both generations that are described in this week's Torah portion, both the generation of the flood and the generation of the dispersion, with their obscene unity, where they were united against God. That same morally bankrupt world is totally silent about the sexual slavery of Christian women in the Middle East, in Syria, at the hands of ISIS, the rape of the Yazidis, and the unbelievable inhumanities that are being waged against these entire populations. Not a word will Obama say, not a word does the UN say. Nobody has anything to say about any of these things, because it just can't be done, because Islam is the way to go, and therefore it's a spiral of violence, and Israel has to do something about it. And the foreign minister of Great Britain, whatever his name is, said that it's high time for Israel's occupation to end. And the Arab League calls on the world to protect Palestinians, and all of this stuff that just keeps on rolling. And it's hard to believe. And is Israel waking up? Oh, well, here, a security source said today that the 2 terrorist attacks that killed 3 people and wounded several others in Jerusalem on Tuesday morning seem to be a planned and timed assault. They seem to be a planned and timed assault. There is no doubt that the source of incitement of the sequence of terrorist attacks this morning is East Jerusalem.
You mean the 2 Arabs that got onto a municipal bus this morning, one with a knife and one with a gun? They didn't just happen to get on the same bus coincidentally
this morning's
at the same
terror
time?
attacks were almost simultaneously in Jerusalem and in Ra'anana. One person was badly wounded and 2 lightly wounded. Lightly wounded, by the way, might mean a very, very serious injury. In Ra'anana, so far 2 people killed and 17 wounded in the Jerusalem bus attack in Armon Netziv. It was a combined shooting and stabbing attack, which according to eyewitnesses apparently was supposed to be a hijacking of the bus.
3 were dead. 3 were killed in Jerusalem.
Yes, because 1 man was killed and several were wounded on Malchei Yisrael Street here in Jerusalem in Geula in the car ramming attack. By the way, there was a second attack in Ra'anana, a second stabbing, and 1 person was lightly wounded. You know what? Again, I read this stuff. I don't know if I should laugh or cry. Kerry talks about the Temple Mount. Netanyahu releases a statement and claims that Israel intends to allow Jewish prayer at the contested holy site are absolutely false. What am I supposed to say about that? In other words, In other words, this is the whole problem.
And there are politicians inside Israel who are lathering at their mouths, blaming Jews like the Rabbi and me who go up to the Temple Mount with the desire to pray as being the cause of all this, that we are the reason
and again, the irony
behind
is
all this.
America used to stand, as far as I remember...
Used to stand for something.
Yeah, I mean, what happened to the Superman? Truth, justice in the American way. It used to be what is, I mean, supposedly what is right. And here, the position of the United States of America is that only Muslims should be allowed to pray at the Temple Mount because it is a Muslim site. When the Holy Temple of Israel stood on the Temple Mount, how many years before there was such a thing?
Not if you ask the New York Times. No, they're not quite so sure about that.
Look on the Temple Institute Facebook page for that, the analysis of the article about the New York Times that is trying to convince the world that there never was a temple on the Temple Mount. And even the Muslims would admit that. But the fact is, the temple stood a long time on the Temple Mount before there was any such thing in this world as Islam. And here's the thing, okay? Jeremiah writes, President Obama's former pastor, okay, in along the lines of what has become known as Palestinian Christian liberation theology, okay? Jeremiah Wright goes and gives a speech this past weekend, and it was an event that was hosted by none other than Louis Farrakhan, the inimitable leader of the Nation of Islam. And at this event, Jeremiah Wright says that Jesus was a Palestinian. And he says the original people of this land, and please remember, he says Jesus was a Palestinian. The Palestinian people, they have had the Europeans come and take their country. Okay? And all of this is just to undermine the state of Israel, okay? And we're all Palestinians, by the way, because we were all from this land. But the fact is, you know, he calls Israel an apartheid state, okay? Israel is an apartheid state, but yet the Arab Knesset faction within the Knesset is successfully bringing down the state of Israel from within, right? And the Arab heart surgeons and brain surgeons and lawyers that are all over Israel are evidence that this is not an apartheid state. But I won't bother with that. He manipulates the Palestinian conflict to foam, to stir up the struggles faced by African Americans in America, and thus he makes his comparison between the youth in Ferguson and the youth in Palestine. He says they've united together to remind us that the dots need to be connected. Quoting Martin Luther King Jr., who, by the way, was a friend of the people of Israel, who said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. But here's the problem. When he goes along and says, and anybody who goes along and says, the original people, the Palestinians, have been replaced by these Europeans who came and took their country, may I remind you that we are not Europeans, we are Jews. The Jewish people are not a religion. They are a people. We were born here. We were here, built the two temples, lived here independently until we were exiled by Edom, right? And there always was a minimal Israelite presence, Jewish presence here in the land. We were exiled. We are coming back. The evidence, forget about, I won't quote God, that's okay. I won't do that in case it's not good enough for you. But the scientific and chemical and archaeological evidence of Jewish presence in this land for over 3,000 years is unimpeachable. And all of the remnants of agricultural investment and advancement in the biblical heartland of Israel, in Samaria, in Judea, in the Benjamin region, all of the terracing, all of the ancient olive groves, all of the burial tombs, it's all Israelites. It's not Palestinian because there isn't any Palestinian history, language, culture, or independent identity of a nation called Palestine that ever lived here other than the Jewish people. And the perpetuation of this tired lie of the Jews as occupiers who have come and who have displaced the original people is embraced by all of these come-on artists who have their own agenda. And so now, maybe one of the reasons why the story of the murder of Jews going on to my right and to my left right now is on the back pages and being twisted into stories of how the Jews are the killers, and that's what you're reading about. Maybe it's because these people seem to think that we're the oppressors, and after all, this is only reasonable. There's a people that's oppressed, the Palestinians, and they're sick of it, and they're getting up, and maybe this is it now. They're getting up and they're slaughtering all the Jews, and maybe they'll declare their state. This is exactly what we're up against at the moment, and this is exactly the backdrop of the type of societal evil that is described in this week's Torah portion. And this is the battle right now between light and darkness. Watch our video lesson on Parashat Noach this week, which should actually be posted by the time you listen to this broadcast for the first time. And I think it will be very telling about what is the reality, not only that we are facing here in the land of Israel right now, but that you are facing if you are a listener from the West. And unfortunately, this morally bankrupt world is an exact reflection of the generations of chaos. And that's exactly what's going on now.
So, there you have it. You did a good job there, Rabbi, of describing the impossible. It is such a sick, twisted reality.
But we're not afraid. People are saying, what should we do? Should we not go out? Should we not go out to buy a quart of milk? Should we not go to work? Should we not send our children to school? That's exactly what the enemy wants, and we are not going to succumb to that. It's not the first time that we face this kind of thing, and it's not the last time. This is the price that we pay for honoring God and sanctifying His name, and a Jew living in the land of Israel is a sanctification of God. And you can all just go and fall off the world, as far as I care. Oh, sorry about that. I lost my
They
hand.
can fall off the world. We'll pray
Good
in
time
the
for
Temple
a break.
Mount.
Stay with us
And that's all
as we
there is
continue to
it.
tell you the truth. If you can handle it, Temple Talk. We'll be right back.
Shalom and welcome back to Temple Talk. This is Yitzchak Reuven. With me, Rabbi Richman. We are the Temple Institute here in Jerusalem. Today is the first day of a 2-day Rosh Chodesh of the new month of Mar Cheshvan, bitter Cheshvan or distant Cheshvan. And today is the 13th day of October 2015. The Hebrew year is 5776. We've been talking about the current situation of terror here in the land of Israel, which has taken a horrific toll on the Jewish people. Rabbi mentioned earlier his video teaching of this week's Parashat Noach, and it's extremely relevant to what is happening here today in the land of Israel and around the world. You must listen to it. In fact, I would say, because it's uploaded now, it's already on YouTube, I would say even stop listening to this now, listen to that, and then come back to this. And listen to it again afterwards as well, because you have to really listen to it and hear it twice to believe it, because it's so unbelievable. But the horrors and the self-destruction, man's self-destruction described in this week's reading of Noach is basically what's happening today in for our very eyes, to our tremendous dismay.
And it was during this very month that we're beginning now, the month of Cheshvan, that the floodwaters began to fall and rise on the earth.
And I was going to add also, Cheshvan, Mar Cheshvan, is the month that follows Tishrei, and Tishrei, of course, is a month full of holidays and celebrations and New Year and Yom Kippur and Sukkot and Simcha, being happy and bringing in the new year and changing our ways and being better people and gearing up for all good things. And then Cheshvan comes along, and it's a very quiet month, the quietest of all the months. There's no holiday in the month of Cheshvan, and we can talk about that more, about what may be in the future. But current status of Mar Cheshvan is that it's pretty quiet, and that's why it's called, one of the reasons why it's called Mar, because it's a sort of a letdown, although I think a lot of people could use the breather. But this year, of course, there's a new bitterness because of the horrible wave of terror attacks that we are witnessing here in the land of Israel right now, here and on this day.
Which is all calculated and all planned and all part of a larger planned operation to
listen, the first attack, which was the murder of a young couple in front of their children, was the day after Abbas stood at the General Assembly in the UN and said Oslo is finished. And basically, that was the green light for the current wave.
If only Oslo would be finished, that would be great news. If Oslo
well, just like our government clings to the perverse status quo, and in Temple Mount, our government also clings to the perverse, self-destructive, and basically brain-dead Oslo agreements, which every pundit, left, right, even politicians left, right in Israel, around the world, they all agree, it's dead, it's over.
But when I read these pundits and these commentators, and when I read statements made by government officials, whether they're our own government officials or or the Europeans or the Americans, talking as if the Palestinians, so-called, are actually people that you can talk to, that have something in common with you, that you could actually, that they, like when Karen goes and he makes these ridiculous statements about two peoples living side by side in peace, it's just so infuriating, because these people are totally dedicated to destroying us in every way. How many more examples do I have to give you of the savagery, of the absolute, diabolical nature of evil that they are displaying in these attacks, and in their reactions to the attacks, and in what they tell their children, and how they raise their children, and what they promise their children. How much more can I tell you about the horrendous force of violence that they are capable of? And we've taught many times in the past about the mystical nature of this month, Mar Cheshvan, and how it, as you mentioned, comes on the heels of the month of Tishrei, which was so replete, so action-packed, so chock full of mitzvot ma'asiyot, of action-oriented commandments of the four species of Sukkot, building the sukkah, the shofar, and Rosh Hashanah, fasting, and Yom Kippur. And now it comes along this month, and there's no major holidays in it. And we've taught a very interesting idea, and we'll repost some of the things that we've done in the past. We've taught about how this month, according to our sages of blessed memory, is actually on hold, because in a teaching we are told that God promised this month that in the future the dedication ceremony of the third temple will take place during this month. And that's a very, very deep idea, and why that's so exactly has to do with a certain historical pattern that we've taught about before. I don't want to spend time on that now, but the idea is that that's not just a whimsical notion we've mentioned, but that we can make that happen if we want. And that's why there's no holidays in this month, ostensibly because it's on hold for the greatest holiday of all in the future. And thus we see that to some extent, on some level, the idea is that the temple, the holy temple, is the theme. on a root level of this entire month. And so too we find that, you know, the hoodwinking of the world here is that this absolute savage murder that's being perpetrated against man, woman, and child here in Israel as we speak, literally, has something to do with the fact that the Jewish people are trying to take over the Temple Mount. That Netanyahu is going to allow Jews to pray on the Temple Mount. First of all, I wish that was true, but unfortunately it isn't, because Netanyahu is an absolute loser with no backbone whatsoever, and he seems to be totally disconnected not only from the people of Israel, but from what the people of Israel are all about. The people of Israel are all about the Temple Mount. And I have to tell you that under his watch, the past few years, the situation vis-a-vis Jewish rights on the Temple Mount has deteriorated to an all-time low. So he has no intention whatsoever of allowing Jews to pray on the Temple Mount. However, according to the Supreme Court and every other democratic institution in the state of Israel, that's exactly what we should be doing. But be that as it may, he says, no, that's not true. And the murderers among us go and start slicing everyone to ribbons, running them over and shooting them down, man, woman, and child, because they say, oh, you are trying to take over the temple. What does all that say to you? Doesn't it say to you that the whole idea of the presence of evil at that place, the husk of evil that has subjugated that holy site, doesn't it show you how the other side is willing to fight to keep up its stranglehold over that site? And don't you see, as the West declines and as jihad spreads and as Sharia law spreads and as the West sinks into an abyss of Islamic frenzy, don't you see that all this is emanating from the holiest place on earth, and that the silence and complicity of the world in subjugating the Jewish people in their own land and in trying to undermine their sovereignty and in trying to take away the only thing that is rightfully theirs in the world, which is the land of Israel, right? Don't you see how the dots truly are connected, and that what befalls Israel is going to befall the entire world? But the punchline, which is the good news that you have to watch the video lesson on Noach to appreciate, is that we're absolutely unconcerned about our future. Our future is secure. But I think that you do have to worry. And I think it's interesting that the Haftarah, prophetic reading, for this week's Torah portion of Noach is none other than a chapter that we begin to read in Isaiah 54. Rani akara lo yalada. Sing out, O barren one who has not given birth.
Is this your Parsha, Rabbi?
Yes, it is my bar mitzvah Parsha. 43 years ago.
Wow.
I was just a boy.
A lad.
Purple suit, purple shirt, and purple tie.
Didn't
and
know
I
any
distinctly
better.
remember as I stood up on the pulpit, not knowing what to do with my hands.
Whoa.
Anyway, sing out, you, O barren one, declares Isaiah, who has not given birth. Break into glad song and be jubilant, you who have not been in birth travail. For the children of the desolate, meaning Jerusalem, will outnumber the children of the inhabited one, said Hashem. Broaden the place of your tent, and let the curtains of your dwelling stretch out. Stint not, lengthen your cords, and strengthen your pegs. For you will burst out to the right and to the left. Your offspring will inherit nations, and they will settle desolate cities. Fear not, for you will not be shamed. Do not feel humiliated, for you will not be disgraced. For you will forget the shame of your youth, and you will no longer recall the disgrace of your widowhood. It goes on and goes on, and it's very, very beautiful. It's a haftarah of consolation, and it also reads, for but a brief moment I have forsaken you, and with abundant mercy will I gather you in. With a slight wrath I have concealed my countenance from you for a moment, but with eternal kindness shall I show you mercy, said your Redeemer, Hashem. For like the waters of Noah, this shall be to me, just as I swore that the waters of Noah would never again pass over the earth, so have I sworn not to be wrathful with you, nor to rebuke you. For the mountains may be moved, and the hills may falter, but my kindness shall not be removed from you, and my covenant of peace shall not falter, said the one who shows you mercy, Hashem. So there, Jeremiah, right? Barack Obama, John Kerry, that lady whose name I forgot last week, with the stringy, greasy blonde hair from the European Union.
Right.
All of you, you know what? Like my mother, she should rest in peace, used to say, take a slow boat to China. Whatever you want, go ahead. But the fact is, we're not gonna be moved by any of this. You're just forcing the moment to its crisis. And the crisis of the moment is that there is ultimately a side to stand on, and you have to choose what that side is going to be. And if you can't figure that out, if you don't have the ability to see what's going on here, the complicity of the world and what the press is doing, you've got to save yourself, man, because it's coming down right now.
You know, you mentioned before, Mar Cheshvan is also the month that the floodwaters began, and also the month in the future that the dedication of the third temple will take place. So basically, the third temple is the complete antidote to the corruption and decadence of the world that is described in Noach and is occurring today in the world. So, and which is why you said before that whatever happens to the world, you know, the land of Israel will be above that, and we won't experience the wrath of God should the world not change its course.
Reference the video. I just don't want to give away the line.
Okay, so I mean, it's a choice as clear as, you know, day or night, black and white. Which side are you on? You're either going to be on dry land, here in the land of Israel, on a Temple Mount, holy temple, part of being in that place of the Shekhinah, of God's presence, or you're going to be engulfed in the floodwaters of your own immoral decadence.
And again, all these pundits and commentators and cynics that intimate that, you know, it's a contested spot. First of all, it's really not contested at all. Islam is controlling it, and the Jewish people don't have any rights there whatsoever, neither do the Christians. And therefore, I don't see any contest. And second of all, you know, the way they talk about this, again, the spiral of violence and what Israel is trying to do, and everything is about the settlers, right? I just brought a lady from Tennessee yesterday, but she was also a settler. We're all settlers when we go to the Temple Mount. The whole idea of this historical, this historical whitewash, this historical lie, this whole revisionist history thing, it's the tactic of people who are bent on obliterating another people. That's exactly what this is all about. And the fact that it's not only condoned, but it's actually promoted by the United States of America, who insists that Israel respects the status quo. I thought the United States of America stands for freedom and justice, a freedom of worship, and equal rights for everybody. And here they are saying that no, that Jewish people and Christians, once again, have no right to pray at the Temple Mount. Why? Why is that? It's not even an Islamic site. And this leads us to another topic that we really need to discuss, because we're constantly being bombarded because of a couple of opportunists who have resuscitated this ridiculous idea and making some money off of it. We're bombarded by letters and comments from people who say, you know what, you're looking in the wrong place anyway. This is not actually the site of the Holy Temple. The holy site of the Holy Temple has been discovered, and they quote a couple of these books that our people are reading about how we got it all wrong. That's not where the temple is. The temple is in the city of David. The temple is to the north. The temple is to the south. This is only a Roman fortress. This is not the spot of the temple. And of course, the self-serving, apocalyptical agenda of these people that are promoting this idea that the temple is not on the Temple Mount is basically that we should bring on the end, because we should build the temple somewhere else, and everything's going to be fine, and then everything that they're expecting to happen, which is not particularly sympathetic to the Jewish people, will happen because we'll be able to build the temple. And it's all just so ridiculous, because it implies that we, the Jewish people, have lost where the temple is.
We have some kind of amnesia.
I had to put up a sign, put up a sign for a lost dog or cat on the street, on the lamp post. Has anybody seen my temple? It's been 2,000 years. I don't remember where it is. But that is not the case. We know exactly where the Holy Temple is. We know it never moved, and just like we never lost the Ark of the Covenant, we never lost the site of the Holy Temple. And these pop archaeologists and pop pastors and pop scholars, that come along with these unbelievable revelations that they discovered where the temple really is, and that we're misreading Josephus, and we're misreading our own texts, and that's not where the temple is at all. So there's no problem, because there's no conflict, and we can build it right away, and everything's going to be fine, and you can have your cake and eat it. It's all based on ignorance.
First, I got two things to say. First of all, I got news for all these people. If Israel decided, right, went along with the charade and said, okay, the place of the Holy Temple is somewhere, who knows where in the land of Israel. If we were to intend to build it there, believe me, the Muslim world would declare that as their holiest site.
Of course, they're upset that we want to rebuild the Chorva synagogue in the middle of the Jewish quarter.
Okay, that's one thing. The second thing was whether wittingly or unwittingly, you are completely complicit in the Muslim lie that the temple didn't exist there, that there never was a Jewish temple, and if there was, it certainly didn't exist here. You're basically saying the same thing. You're basically agreeing with these murderous people, this murderous religion that wants to destroy us and overrun the world with their Sharia law and their beheadings and their enslavement, etc., etc. So, get a grip, man. Like, who are you kidding? You're kidding yourselves. You're telling us that we don't know what we're talking about. We have 4,000 years of knowing what we're talking about.
And if you don't mind, it is a Jewish subject, so could you show like a little bit of respect, a little bit of modesty? It's a uniquely and idiosyncratically Jewish subject, and I think we have it covered. I think we know exactly where the temple was and where it should be, and that really never was a question. So thanks for your unsolicited advice, but it's okay.
We know where it is, we know where it was, we know where it's going to be, and when we build it, that's where we're going to build it.
And that's not the problem. The problem is not the location. The problem is that you, our dear friends in the West, are facing a very difficult situation, because you have allowed, and your leaders have allowed, this devil cult, this cult of bloodletting and murder and rape and slavery. You have allowed it to become the symbol of, I don't know, everything good in the world. Everything that's right in the world is now represented by the people who are bringing you the last vestige of total barbarism in this modern world. The people who are bringing you human trafficking, gang rape, slavery of children, mass murder. These are the people that you are now up against. They have infiltrated your towns and cities. You have allowed this. And I don't know how to tell you this, but it's not the Jews' fault. It really isn't. And Israel is the only thing standing between you and everything that we're reading about in this week's Torah portion, between you and the utter loss of the world, because Israel is the Noah's Ark.
The West has
for this world.
The West has created
the beacon
an intellectual
of
and moral Tower of Babel, which is not just going against the Jewish people, not just going against where the temple was. It's going against God. I mean, what's happening here is that the world is in a fight, in a struggle to obliterate God from the world, not just the Jewish people, not just Israel, not just the Holy Temple, to obliterate God from the world. And that, my friends, is a battle that man can't win. And if you don't believe me, again, just go back to this week's reading of Noach. Rabbi, I don't know if you heard. Don't worry about
us as we go out from here into the streets to wait for a bus or to pick up some milk or something like that. Personally, I'm cocked and locked, and I won't hesitate. Don't worry, we'll be okay, because God is on our side and because the righteousness of our cause is self-evident. I'm a little worried about all of you, because I don't think that you understand that this is actually your fight too, and it's just about too late. But listen, good luck with that. You brought it upon yourselves. I think that we really should reunite as a family, as mankind, and hold on to the last vestige of what it means to be created in the divine image and stop this absolute madness. But that's only my personal opinion.
Rabbi, did you read today that Iran tested some kind of nuclear something, and the United States says, ooh, that might be a violation of our deal? Oh, well, not really very important. Jews are trying to pray in the Temple Mount, and that's much more significant and much more dangerous to the world today.
Don't worry, it's the Jews' fault.
It's the Jews' fault. Thanks for being with us. Temple Talk.